Hello, Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce members. This is Drew Camp, President and CEO of the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce, here for our March 24th weekly legislative update. First off, I wanted to start off by noting that next week is funnel week. It's the second funnel. And what that means is if a bill is not an appropriations bill, a ways and means bill, a leadership bill, or a rules bill, it has to make it through one whole chamber, either the House or the Senate, and then through the respective committee in the other chamber. Otherwise, it will die and will not move forward for the remainder of session, with the targeted adjournment date being April 28th to really winnow policy bills down as they start largely talking about budget. And as we look at the budget and the appropriations bills that are going to be forthcoming, we have seen that the Senate has released their targets. The House is working through their targets right now. The revenue estimating conference did meet. We saw revenue down slightly as expected due to tax reform. So they'll be using the December REC numbers that the governor used for her budget proposal to move forward with how they're going to do the appropriations process here for the remainder of the session. That's going to be the biggest item that they're going to be doing here in the last month, is obviously working through the budgets in the House and the Senate, and then ultimately working through it with the governor, obviously, at the end to get to a mutually agreeable terms for all three individuals and entities. So another big topic that they're working on as well is obviously property tax. It may be pushed off to next year as they kind of look at some additional information and things like that. But assessments are imminent, so we'll have to just wait and see what happens when those are released and how that moves this conversation forward for the remainder of session here for the last month. But one thing that we've kind of started to look into is one of the reasons, obviously, you see some conversation around property tax is that we're ranked 40th in the tax foundation's rankings for property tax. We obviously saw some drastic movement and improvement on the income tax side with those rankings with the recent changes we made over the last few years. But just kind of looking at what are some of those metrics and how is that actually figured as to how we are 40th and why. And it's not just property taxes that is included in that ranking, it's also wealth taxes. So we expect to probably move a couple spots up in the rankings in a positive manner in the next few years, with the inheritance tax being phased out. And then also it's just the terminology that Iowa uses is a little bit different than some other states. So that's also caused us to have a little bit of an adverse impact and slightly lower ranking. But one thing to note positively with a very important mechanism for us as chambers and economic development organizations is that our ratio of TIF in the state of Iowa keeps our collection of collections out of the tax foundation rankings and actually helps us with the metrics that they have. So again, obviously, we're always advocating for TIF, and obviously it's being a positive here in this rank, excuse me, in this ranking system. One thing the Tax Foundation is planning on doing is they're planning on updating these rankings to be more granular in future years. So we'll see also how that impacts our rankings, as well as any potential reforms that we'll see in the near term. There's also commercial vehicle tort reform that's also being looked at. The governor hasn't been as vocal and as supportive as she was with Med-Mal. If you recall, early on in the session, that got over the hump. The medical malpractice tort reform got over the hump. We're not seeing as much support from her on the commercial vehicle tort reform. House is close. It's really going to come down to the House as far as if they're going to be able to get the 51 votes necessary, obviously, to be able to move that bill. So that's something we'll continue to watch. But also now the ag industry has gotten involved as well. So we'll see what implications that has. With regards to the IADA technical bill, the one that includes the biorenewables, the innovation tax credits, and had angel investor pulled out of it, that continues to move forward, and we're hoping to be able to keep that momentum going forward into the end of session. And then with regards to the mega bill, there was a sub on Wednesday afternoon in the Senate. Business groups are starting to line up and kind of meet with the speaker and the Senate majority leader to kind of have conversations of how we can hopefully move that bill. Because one of the biggest things to look at is we're fortunate because Mills County has really the epitome of the site that could be utilized for this program. But, you know, for those who say that it doesn't apply to every community, projects of that scale and that magnitude impact the entire state. When you're talking about billions of dollars of investments, thousands of jobs, that's something that regardless of where you're at in the state, you're somehow going to see a benefit because of the ripple effect statewide within our tax coffers and other things along those lines. So that's something we're really sure people are aware of, is even though a few select communities, again, fortunate that we have one here in south of us in Mills County that's very much in our labor shed, but going to have ripple effects to really impact the whole state in a magnitude that's very hard to match just because of the sheer scale and scope of these projects. Also, the carbon pipelines and eminent domain. There was a Supreme Court ruling on transmission lines that has kind of shot some new life into this. The House has been talking about the eminent domain side of things, and they did pass that this week. But the Senate doesn't have as much momentum or energy for that conversation, so we'll have to wait and see if they even take it up as an issue. One thing to watch as we kind of get closer to the targeted adjournment date of April 28th, and I've said this before, is that, again, I mentioned the Supreme Court making a ruling that had an implication. If they make a ruling on the fetal heartbeat bill before the legislative session is adjourned, that is something that we would anticipate possibly drying the session out a little bit more so they can make some legislative changes or reforms and have some targeted legislation on that topic if it becomes applicable and the Supreme Court does act before the legislature adjourns. The last thing that I want to touch on is that I want to make sure that everyone's aware that we have our first community-wide, open to the public legislative coffee tomorrow morning from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. at Wilson Middle School. Those who are coming, come in the south side doors. There'll be signs on the doors telling you that's the right place to go in. You'll then head down and you'll turn right and we'll be in the band orchestra room. And we thank Dr. Murillo and her team and the team at Wilson Middle School for helping support us and hosting this event. They've been very helpful and it's very, very much appreciated. We also want to note that next Wednesday, the 29th, from 5 to 7 p.m., we will be at the Embassy Suites in the East Village for the Council Bluffs Chamber of Commerce legislative reception. This is the one that was rescheduled from February 15th. So we're really excited to have this event, host our legislators, host our partners, host our community members to really showcase the greatness that is Council Bluffs in Southwest Iowa and Potawatomi County. So we're very excited for that. And we really do hope that several can make the trip over and support our community in that capacity. With that, I will end this week's legislative update the same way I always do, by just showing some gratitude for those who continue to support the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce, whether it's through your membership, your participation, your sponsorship, however you find ways to be engaged and participative and supportive of the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce. We very much appreciate it, and we look forward to continuing to work with you to serve the Council Bluffs, Potawatomi County, and Southwest Iowa community. Thanks, and have a nice rest of the day.